Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, April 10th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 146 days, the game against Michigan in 230 days, and the Ohio State spring game now in just 5 days. We're going to be talking a little bit about that spring game and the lead up to it and the spring practices that have led up to this moment as we're sort of anticipating that spring game a little later on this week. And we're going to do it with some interviews with a couple of Ohio State coaches. We're going to start with a little bit from Ryan Day, getting the chance to talk to him after the Buckeyes' most recent practice on Friday, and also a little bit from running backs coach Tony Alford and new tight ends coach Keenan Bailey, just on some of the developing storylines in their rooms so far this spring. So let's start with Ryan Day, and I'm going to warn you in advance, this interview was recorded after practice last Friday, and there was a whole bunch of background noise in the indoor facility, still a bunch of stuff going on, a lot of people around. It was not a formal interview setting, so this is just sort of a bunch of cameras around Ryan Day. So you're going to, hear some jostling and some background noise and all kind of stuff. It is what it is. This is how that interview was conducted. So, just let's start with, this is the week of the spring game. How much is there left to do right now for Ohio State left in spring practice before they kick that spring game off on Saturday?
A lot, yeah. It was good today. I thought, that's about what we wanted to get done with the practice. A lot of back and forth. You saw we had, some different situations there, certainly some first downs, red zone pass. We had third down, short yardage, red zone. So we got a bunch of the situations done, but we got to keep playing. We got to keep getting the young guys better. We got to keep getting the older guys. They're 10,000 reps they need to master their craft. And so today was a good day, though. I thought the guys competed well. Get some rest over the weekend, come back next week.
We got a chance to watch a bunch of practice last Friday, about an hour or so of practice. And one of the things we noticed was guys would sort of get pulled out of drills, and you'd see them running laps at times during practice. So what was the deal with that? Why were they getting pulled out of drills and running laps?
Yeah, anytime you're in spring practice, preseason, there has to be consequences for making mistakes, and we try to simulate the game the best we can. And just to make a mistake and think it's going to be okay, it doesn't work. So if there's a penalty, there's a lap, take them out of the game. On both sides of the ball. If the ball's on the ground and a fumble, we have them do a lap. So we just try to make sure there's a penalty for making a mistake so if they feel it, because it can't just be okay, and that's what we do.
Spring football is one of those funny times of year where it's never all good news or all bad news. Every time the offense scores a touchdown, boy, the defense gave up a touchdown, and so that's bad. Or every time the defense gets a stop, oh man, that offense, they couldn't move the ball at all. So on the whole, on Friday, it was probably the defense had the better of the run of play for the chunk of practice that we got to watch. And, that's good for the defense. But if you're Ryan Day and you're sort of a quarterback guy, he was kind of getting after the quarterback at certain times, both of the young quarterbacks at times during the course of that practice. So what was up with that? Why this was maybe a little more intense than we've seen Ryan Day in the past. So what was going on there?
Yeah, we had some fun today. I liked the way the quarterbacks competed. I thought it was a good day. I was getting after them today, but they both embraced it, and I thought it was fun. We had a blast. Every rep wasn't great, but when they allow you to coach them hard, man, you can get a lot better. And I thought they did that today.
So you hear that Ryan Day was kind of getting after the quarterbacks, and I feel like people might assume like, oh man, they're terrible. Everything. It's a lost cause. Everything is terrible. No, it's fine. It really is fine. I mean, how is Ryan Day feeling overall about the quarterback play right now?
We're not there yet, no, but today was a step in the right direction. I like the way they competed today, took the classroom to the field. And again, if they're going to allow us to coach them hard like that, then they're going to get better faster. But we'll see. We're not there yet, though.
One of the surprising developments this spring was that Carson Hinsman was the starter, or at least the guy running with the ones at center from day one of spring practice, and has basically held on to that spot for most of spring. Now, Day was not willing to say Hinsman has earned the starting job, but he's certainly been running with the ones for the bulk of the spring. But a little bit on Friday, we also got to see Vic Cutler running with the ones at sometimes at that center position as well. And Cutler's a transfer from the University of Louisiana Monroe, which is an FBS school, but kind of on the other end of FBS from Ohio State. So what has Ryan Day seen from Vic Cutler so far this spring?
Good progress. He's learning how to practice at Ohio State every day, and that's an adjustment. So he has athleticism. He has want to. He's out here every day. And like I say all the time, if you're out here every day practicing, that's how you get better. And I don't know if it's going to be right now, but eventually, we're going to look up and we're going to see a lot of improvement. I think we're seeing some of that with him.
We've gotten to watch enough spring practice that we're starting to pick up on some trends. Certain guys that they look really good on one day, and then you see him again, and it's like, oh, he looked good again this day, another day. And then you see him a third time, it's like, boy, another good day for this guy. And eventually it starts to mean something. And one of the guys who's really looked pretty consistently good this spring is Dallan Hayden, the sophomore running back. He has really been impressive every time we've seen him, it feels like. So what has Ryan Day seen out of Dallan Hayden this spring?
Yeah, in the run game, really, really good, and he's building in the pass game, protection-wise, understanding where to go. He's out here every day. I mean, he's becoming a really good back.
Thought this was a really good question from our buddy Patrick Murphy of 247. He asked, where do this quarterbacks right now, Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, where do they stack up with where some of the past guys were at this point in the spring?
It's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that just yet. There's times where I see things that they're doing at their progression that I haven't seen other guys do, and then there's other times where I feel like maybe they're a little bit behind. So I think there's some things in there that they're on track for, other things they need to continue to improve on, but probably hard for me to answer that just right now.
Next up is going to be Tony Alford, and this is another one where you're going to have a little bit of background noise, so apologies for that. There's no getting around it the way the interviews were setting up, so apologies for that, but you should definitely be able to understand everything Tony Alford's saying here. So he was asked about J.K. Dobbins and TreVeyon Henderson, because those are guys who've had some sort of similarity to their first two seasons, a little bit of a different reason, and Tony Alford will get into that a little bit in his answer, but, the surprising breakout freshman season, and then maybe a little bit of a step back in that sophomore season. Now, Dobbins kind of really changed everything before his third season and had a breakout year, more than 2,000 yards rushing, Ohio State record, an incredible season, got himself drafted really high by the Baltimore Ravens. So what exactly did J.K. Dobbins do before that third year, and is that something that TreVeyon Henderson can maybe learn from?
Yeah, just getting back to some of the mindset he has as a freshman, just the way he's preparing, not just his mind but his body and things like that. But that's a totally different deal, though. The kid was hurt. But with that being said, there's also some things he could do emotionally and mentally that'll help keep him at ease and the calmness about him. So, we went through it. We are where we are, and we put that behind us, and here we go.
Mentioned earlier that Dallan Hayden has been impressive in his looks this spring. With TreVeyon Henderson out, with Evan Pryor out, with Mayan Williams kind of limited, it has really been Dallan Hayden and Chip Trayanum for the most part running with the running backs this spring. And Trayanum has been impressive this spring as well. So, how much better, or maybe just how much more comfortable is Chip Trayanum now at the running back position than he was maybe compared to last fall when he just sort of shifted over after playing linebacker for a bunch of the start of his Buckeye career?
Well, just being comfortable playing the position again. And he's a pro, how he handles his business as far as his study habits, as far as how he takes care of his body, the way he practices, his full tilt. So, but we already knew that. I think a lot of it's just kind of getting ingrained again in just the feeling of being in the backfield and running.
Well, the Buckeyes have 5 returning scholarship running backs, but as mentioned, 3 of them have kind of been banged up and not played much or at all this spring. So what does Tony Alford sort of take from what he's seen from Dallan Hayden and Chip Trayanum this spring?
Yeah, I think that Dallan has grown. He's maturing. Every single day, again, you're talking, this is still his first spring. He's never been through that. He played some in the fall, but he's still maturing. He's changing his body. He's finally learning the game, and I think he's starting to understand just how important it is to study the game. And when I say study the game, I don't mean watch highlight videos. I mean actually study the game and what's going on, and taking care of his body. Dallan's a tough kid, and you can watch him his game, 8, 10, 12 pounds, whatever it is. So he's been really good in the meetings as well. He's answering things very, very affirmatively, and the way he's playing, and so he's growing up as he should be, and he's maturing. And like I said earlier, Chip's a very mature player, and it's like dealing with a grown man in the world.
With 5 healthy scholarship running backs this fall, you assume there'll be 5 healthy scholarship running backs this fall anyway. Are they already looking at trying to figure out specific roles for those guys to get all those guys, or as many of those guys as possible, specific roles this fall? Or is this just kind of figure out the depth, get as much depth as you can right now?
Right now, I'm just trying to build depth because we want guys that are 3-down players. And everybody can do everything. Obviously, as you move through things, some guys are going to be better than others at certain things, but right now it's just really training guys to do everything that we do the best of their abilities, and enhance them wherever we can enhance them. We haven't started putting packages together, I think is a direct answer to your question. Those haven't been put together, but as we get into the summer and the fall, we'll do those.
Finally, let's hear from Keenan Bailey, the new tight ends coach. He has a room that's pretty stacked with talent as well. Cade Stover is sort of locked in at that number one spot, but after that, everyone else, there's some interesting jostling going on in the depth chart below Cade Stover in terms of who's going to be that second guy when they're out there in 12 personnel and all that. So let's start with one of the leading contenders to be that second guy out there, and that's Joe Royer. He has bulked up this offseason. You're going to hear Keenan Bailey talk a little bit about that and how that added bulk is maybe showing some early results.
I think it goes back to 8 weeks before spring ball. He's added 12 pounds. I mean, he was bragging he was the heaviest tight end in the room. And now Cade has slimmed down, and Cade looks great too. But I think those extra 10 pounds of muscle have been helping out Joe. He's doing some things now in the blocking game and the route running game that maybe he didn't even do a year ago because he was lighter. So yeah, no, he's definitely playing well.
One of the other contenders to be that second tight end behind Cade Stover is G. Scott. Now, many Ohio State fans, their last big impression of G. Scott is not a positive one. That would be the personal foul penalty he took in the second half for that headbutt against Michigan. Not a great moment, but how has he bounced back from that? Maybe learned from that moment?
Yeah, and I think if you ask G, say the same thing. He and I every day or talk about stacking days, just one day at a time, one period at a time. And he's done a great job at that. Has not missed a practice, has not missed a rep yet so far. And he keeps getting better. Now he's even a leader. He's taking Jelani. Hats off to G. He's taking Jelani under his wing and showing him here's how it needs to be done.
Scott's journey has not been just a real straight line since he came to Ohio State. He obviously started as a wide receiver, spent a couple of years in the wide receiver room before moving over to tight end. So what has he had to overcome since moving over from wide receiver to tight end?
Yeah, no, and I don't think it's a mental block. I think it's actually the opposite. I think his mentality is great. I think it's a physical thing, right? Again, I'm asking a guy who was with Coach Hartline for 2 years, who came in as an X receiver to block JT, and the next is Jack. So he's getting those techniques down. His body's changed, and again, he's doing that better than he ever has.
And the last guy we wanted to talk about is Jelani Thurman. Now, this interview was before Thurman lost his black stripe, but it was not very hard to read between the lines that was sort of coming when we heard Keenan Bailey talking about Jelani Thurman and when we just got to see Jelani Thurman at practice last week and before. So, what has been so impressive about Jelani Thurman? You hear that answer from Keenan Bailey and then a quick follow-up from Joey Kaufman of the Columbus Dispatch.
Yeah, good. I was just telling these guys off the field, his habits have been great. So every day he's gotten better, and that hasn't been a coincidence. He spends more time in here at night with Sean Binks than anybody. So yeah, really impressed.
Spending time doing what?
Learning the playbook, watching his film, the plays that are in tomorrow, walking through those, taking care of his body.
Now, Thurman has obviously shown that he belongs at Ohio State. You lose your black stripe during your spring of your true freshman year. Okay, you have sort of established that. So, but I think it's important for people to understand how challenging that is, how difficult that is for a freshman tight end to get up to speed at the college level, at the college game, that quickly.
Yeah, first off, I think learning the playbook, right? We have a pro-style offense, so I got to learn the run game, right? That maybe a receiver doesn't maybe have to do as much. I got to learn the pass game that an offensive line doesn't have to do as much. So we're kind of have to learn it like a quarterback. We got the run game, the pass game, and the pass protection game. So learning it's one thing, and then executing it with the techniques and against some pretty big dudes and physical dudes is the second piece.
So there's a little sample of a bunch of different position groups around the Ohio State team. As we head into the final week of Spring Ball 2023, it feels like it just started, and here it is, already almost over. That will be done this weekend with the spring game on Saturday. That kicks off at noon on Big Ten Network, and of course in Ohio Stadium. It should be a beautiful day in Columbus. So if you are heading out there, do stop by and say hi if you see us. And if you are not heading out there, well, make sure you check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We'll have a bunch of our typical coverage from around the game, and lots of there's going to be a lot of storylines this week, both in terms of the game itself and also recruiting. In case you missed it over the weekend, Aaron Noland, the 4-star quarterback out of Georgia, he committed to the Buckeyes. So Ohio State does have its 2024 quarterback commit right now. Tony Gerderman and I dropped a Buckeye Weekly instant reaction show to that news on Saturday night. So you can find that at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle or in the Buckeye Weekly feed on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. So make sure you check that one out. More good news for the Buckeyes, and could be a little more good news coming a little later on, either this week or after the spring game. It's going to be a busy week of recruiting, and Ohio State has a ton of momentum right now on the recruiting trail. So a good time to be a Buckeye fan, and a great time to be a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com, where we're covering all of it for you, covering the team, covering recruiting, covering it all in one spot. A team of experts, a team of insiders, all for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.